Everything you've been told about addiction is a lie. There's no biological marker for you're an addict. The "you're born with it" statement is probably the biggest gaslighting statement of the entire thing, I would think.
Probably.
But it's a lie. It's a lie. We are your whistleblowing shrinks, Dr. Teralyn and therapist Jenn. This is the Gaslit Truth Podcast. Before we set this whole conversation on fire, like, subscribe, ring that bell over on YouTube. If this show has ever put words to something you felt but couldn't explain, supporting it really matters.
Yes. And just remember, Dr. Teralyn and I are deprescribing consultants. What does that mean? It means we can help you get off of psychiatric medication safely for the brain and for the body. So if that's something that you are interested in doing, shoot us an email at thegaslitTruthPodcast@gmail.com and we will help get you started.
Yes. So we're going to dive into the world of addiction today. And actually, we're going to start doing that a little bit more here too, because we feel like the worlds have collided. Essentially. Yeah, the med-harmed world collides with the addiction community 100%, even though we like to believe we are separate entities and not the same. We struggle in the exact same ways.
Yes.
Don't come for me. Okay, don't come for me.
All right. So where should we start this one today, Terry? What do you think?
So the rabbit hole I got into the other day on social media, I think is probably a good place to start because, the chemical imbalance theory that we talk about all the time for mental health.
Blue in the face.
Blue in the goddamn face.
It's not real.
Yes. To recap. It's a lie.
We're exhausted. We're exhausted by this. Imagine how exhausted like Joanna Moncrief is.
Oh my God.
Who is, or your Mark Horowitzes of the world who have actually done the research.
Yeah. When Mark said, I'm kind of bored with my own story. I'm like, yes, 100%.
Like, we didn't even do the research on this. And we're so sick of talking about the chemical imbalance theory. Okay. But clearly
still fighting about it, but there's still an argument. Yes, because like the addiction space, if you were in the mental health community, you weren't born with a chemical imbalance. We know that to be true. In the addiction space, you weren't born with a chemical imbalance either. Okay. So we talk about the addiction, and I remember learning about this, Jenn, that it is a dopamine signaling reward pathway problem that you've probably had your entire goddamn life.
Yeah,
okay?
you were born with it because we know we have monozygotic versus dizygotic twin studies that tell us this.
That's a lot of words that I don't even want to talk about today.
I can't.
Yes.
Yes. You're born.
Yes.
You're born.
Genetics. It is in your genetics. It's all genetic.
Yeah. Yes. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about genetics and addiction. So these are one of the gaslighting statements that is said to people who struggle with addiction. In fact, this is something that was taught to us as clinicians when Terry and I were in school. We both have
even in practice
addiction add-ons to our licenses. We both have written or run addiction treatment programs. Okay, so we fucking know a few things about a few things here. It's
been a while for me on that.
Okay,
but really, it was one of the reasons why I left, because the evidence-based practice was so terrible.
It is
that I couldn't support it. But anyway, that's a whole different thing.
But here's what we're told, everybody. We are told from the Bible, as I hold it up in front of my face.
I got mine too. If you want to.
Okay, here we go, everybody. Whoop whoop. I am at alcohol use disorder right now, and if you guys don't know what we're talking about, like, get your ass on YouTube and look at what we're holding up, and look what we're doing.
Page 490. It starts.
Page 490. We're talking about alcohol use disorder. We're just going to pick one out here. You've been gaslit into believing that alcohol use disorder runs in families. I added that first line in there. It really should say that in the DSM. With 40 to 60% of variance of risk explained by genetic influences. The rate of this condition is 3 to 4 times higher in close relatives of individuals with alcohol use disorder, with values highest for individuals with a greater number of relatives who are affected, those close genetic relationships to the affected person, and the higher severity of alcohol-related problems to these relatives. Okay, so you have a 40 to 60% chance higher of developing this disorder, so you're genetically fucked because your first-degree relatives are alcoholics.
But what if they're not?
What if they
What?
never had alcoholism in the
And
first
you
place?
do. And you do.
Mm. Okay.
Mhm.
So, guys, similar to major depression,
All
bipolar
the same.
disorder,
It's all the
there is
same.
there is no genetic identified marker for alcoholism, for
Mhm.
addiction. That doesn't exist.
As a matter of fact, I'm thinking like, so other addictions, right? When we talked about it was a dopamine signaling problem that has never been proven to be that before. They don't do any
Mhm,
before studies, right? Um,
mhm.
Alcohol is not a dopamine really issue. It's a
It's a
GABA
GABA issue.
issue. So
Mhm.
that line of thinking doesn't even make sense, and that's not written anywhere. Have you ever heard anybody say, "Oh, I've been told it's a GABA issue"?
I've never heard maybe it's a glutamate issue.
Never. I
Never
have heard I
once.
have heard serotonin because that's usually what gets thrown at people as SSRIs if you are struggling with alcohol. They get an
Yes.
SSRI. So
Yes.
they're assuming then it's a serotonin issue?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
because they say it's a
Mhm.
depression issue,
Right.
even because, you know.
In traditional, addiction spaces, in traditional Western learning with addiction, okay, they
Mhm.
focus on dopamine because this is the neurotransmitter that's most associated with addiction. Now, don't get us wrong. When you start diving into research rabbit holes about addiction,
You're
what
well,
what are we
after
researching?
once you start the
Correct.
addictive substance and after,
Yes.
definitely you've got
Yes.
neurochemical stuff. We're
Yes.
talking
So
about before.
we're talking
We're
about
talking
before.
about
So,
mhm.
yes, there's our little monozygotic, dizygotic twin studies that are out there. I can't even talk seriously about this because it
No.
pisses me off so much because it's such a hoax. Okay.
Yep.
We're Terry and I are going to talk about this too because independently in practice, we bring in different ways to treat addiction that has
Mhm.
nothing to do with all of your traditional addiction treatment. Okay.
No.
However, dopamine plays the central role, guys, in motivation, in pleasure, in like reinforced learning, like habit
Mhm.
formation stuff, right? So it's like, so someone uses addictive substances and it's got to be because their dopamine pathway is fucked up. They're engaging in
They
high
don't
reward
they don't make
behaviors.
enough dopamine is
They
what the
don't,
it's
they don't make
mhm.
enough. Yes.
Yep.
And we're here to tell you that that's markedly inaccurate.
And that's the end of our show. Thank you very much
It's
for
over.
joining
We're
us.
done. Thank you. Okay. So let's talk about why people get gaslit by this, like why people
Mhm.
buy into this idea. Now, if you think about it, guys, if you are struggling with an addiction, okay, and you're going to a provider or you're going to a therapist, you're seeing a psychiatrist, you go to a treatment
Mhm.
center, okay, um,
Mhm.
one of the first things, the first line of treatment we're going to work on for addiction is bringing in a psychiatric medication to
Always.
help manage his first line of treatment.
No, I
First line of
get it.
treatment.
Hold on. I gotta back up for 1 second because I get it when you are in acute withdrawal, right? Whether it's alcohol or even, opiates and things like that,
Yes.
using psychiatric medication for that, I understand.
Mhm.
It's the continuation of that because you have a broken brain, right? Like,
Right.
that's a continuation, and the idea that your brain cannot heal without psychiatric medication is fucking asinine because you don't heal on psych meds anyway, so the addiction world bypasses the idea that the brain has neuroplasticity and can heal itself
Right.
without the substance. They bypass that altogether because clearly your broken brain requires that you don't need heroin or alcohol, you need psych meds.
Right.
That's what you need. Anyway,
Right.
digressing, but anyhow, yeah. Mhm.
Our brain wants balance, right? It wants
All the time.
homeostasis. That's
Yes,
all it wants, guys,
that's all it
24/7,
wants.
right? So if you are taking a medication, okay, or you're using a substance, guys, okay, by
Mhm.
using that substance, your brain is already starting this process of neuroadaptation, right?
Yeah,
It's trying to get to homeostasis repeatedly, right? Like
Yes.
As you keep using a substance, your dopamine receptors are going to decrease in like their availability and in their number. They're going to start to down regulate.
Yeah, when you flood your system, it
Yes.
stops, like, it's too
Yes.
much, and it says, "No, thank you."
So
Mhm,
then what happens is your actual natural dopamine like production might start to decline. In
mhm,
fact, it probably will because
because you are
your
dependent.
you're dependent on it. That's neuroadaptation, guys.
Yep,
Okay. So
mhm.
so that's how it works. It works that same way with the psych med as it does with
Relatively the
heroin.
same way, I
It's
mean,
very
it's really
similar.
not that
Okay.
different, yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
So this is what's happening. So when we have all this research out there that's saying that there is a dopamine issue, a deprivation of it for people who are addicts, yes, there is. That's not a
after,
lie. Yes,
after,
like I'm an
yes,
addict, I'm in a study, I'm having my dopamine tested in my
mhm,
brain. Yes, my production may be extremely low.
right,
Neuroadaptation has happened.
yes,
Sure.
mhm,
But if we're talking about root cause, this
yes,
wasn't happening before you were using the substance, guys. It
no,
happened once you introduced the substance. No different than psychiatric medications. We introduce the medication, and that pathway or whatever pathways are impacted, they're going to go through
mhm,
neuroadaptation. They're going to
yep.
downregulate. Your body's going to produce less.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you're gonna want more, and that's
Yes.
exactly what happens, psychiatric medication, you need more, different med, blah, 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 change this, change that, add this. Same thing in the addiction space, you suddenly drink more, you're
Hmm.
more, frequently, more substance itself, like, it goes off, like, because of that neuroadaptation, because when your body becomes, like,
Yes.
used to it, now that little bit doesn't do the same thing as it used to do before, so we need more of it,
Right.
and that's what it is. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this
So we're
is
not
not,
disagreeing on that
yes.
part, like,
No, we're not
there's no
disagreeing on that.
disagreement there. Mhm.
But that's not how addiction is explained to someone who struggles with addiction.
No,
That's
it's
not how
not.
it's explained. It is explained, they've like it's like they've taken the science and used it against us a little bit, and that, well,
Mhm.
guess what? No, you
You have
have
a
a
broken brain.
you have a deprivation in that dopamine, right? Like,
Yes.
and that is because possibly, like you have a 40-60% chance because your dad was an alcoholic, your
Mm.
grandfather was an alcoholic. You're
Mhm.
Caucasian, you're a Caucasian male. So actually that's going to increase the likelihood of alcoholism. And guess what? In fact, you're right in those rates. Of age, right? Where you're not between the 12 to 17-year-old, but you're amongst the adult men under 65. So actually, you're right in that range. So all these genetic factors and these markers, these are the reasons why you have addiction. You're
Yes.
fitting the age, you're fitting the ethnic demographic, you're have a first degree relative, and guess what?
That's why.
That's it.
Your whole family is fucked in the head. That's why.
Yep.
All of you have broken brains, therefore you have a broken brain, therefore your child is likely to have a broken brain too if you're not
Mhm.
careful, right?
Yes.
If they're not careful. And I think the whole
Yes.
broken brain circumstance with mental health and addiction is, I don't know, it's like off the chain, but I feel like in the addiction space, people aren't talking about it now the way that the mental health space is talking about it,
Mhm.
which is why we're kind of bridging over into this space because it's the same goddamn conversation as it is in the mental health space.
Mhm.
But the addiction space is worse, I think, because most people are, dare I say, brainwashed as consumers into believing that their brain is broken, has always been broken, and will always be broken, right?
Yes.
Without psychiatric intervention.
Right.
And that's the part that is really getting me in today's world too, because they are the next, or should I say, parallel med harmed people. They're not
Right.
just drug harmed, they're now med harmed people. And they don't know it though. They don't understand it yet. They don't know
Mhm.
it yet because we tell them manipulative language. Would you rather be on psych meds or be dead because of a drug overdose?
Yep. Yes.
Right? And I'm like,
Yep.
that is the most manipulative bullshit stuff I've ever heard in my life, ever.
So when I have a client that comes
This
into
is good.
my therapy space, And if any of my clients are out there listening, I commend you for the work that you've done, because to have,
because she's a lot. She's a lot.
oh my
Just
God,
kidding.
like this is how I talk in therapy too. So like, I mean, there is not a big difference. This isn't like Jen's got her podcasting hat on and then there's her therapist hat. No, like the fucking stupid
Jen.
This is how I talk. Okay. When people come to me and they struggle with an addiction, the first thing out of my mouth that I think people have a really hard time hearing is, well, I'm here to tell you, you're not an addict. Your brain is not broken. I care about your history, but we're not putting the eggs in the biological marker basket. And what if I were here to tell you that the reason you're struggling with your addiction has nothing to do with being born with it, but it's from you having and starting the substance in the first place.
Right.
You've layered it with psychiatric medication, because I've never yet had a client who comes as an addict who has not taken psychiatric medication, who's struggling with addiction. Has never existed for me in 15 years. Okay.
I agree with that statement 100%.
So we've really messed things up in the brain by adding that in, because that has created a further imbalance for you. And I said, and what if I were here to tell you that if we optimized your neurotransmitter pathways in a different way, your addiction would be gone.
Yep.
And they sit there and sometimes people are pissed because, again, they've never heard this before.
Well, they're pissed because they have to let go of that idea that they were born with it and there's nothing they can do about it.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And they've been through treatment. They've been in and out of jail and prison. They have lost their families. They have lost their finances, everything. Okay. And so here I come in going, there's nothing wrong. You're not genetically fucked. In fact, we just need to backtrack. We need to go
not
back.
Not that dissimilar to somebody on psych meds. We just need to rebalance your fucking brain, guys.
Yes, that's
Boy,
it.
I'm a sailor today. Woo. Got a lot of swear words. Sorry.
And of course, like the addiction community is like, this is not well received information when you have been brainwashed by the addiction community that something is wrong with your brain. This is not well received when you have been told your entire life your dopamine pathway it's a deprivation. It's fucked up. You were probably born with this and your grandpa was an alcoholic. So this is something you're going to have to live with.
By the way, if only you were diagnosed with ADHD as a child and medicated, maybe you wouldn't be an addict today.
Yes.
Oh, that's a whole nother episode we got to talk about.
Yeah, I mean that's true. But these are the messages.
Dopamine pathway bullshit stuff that they talk about.
These are the messages. And so when I work with clients on addiction, and we're working through struggles with like alcoholism, don't get me wrong, in therapy, we are doing we are breaking down okay, where does trauma play into this? Where does how you manage your symptoms of depression and anxiety play into this? Where does shame and self-worth play into this? Like, we will go through that whole realm of things.
Yes.
But we focus very heavily on what are the things that you are taking right now too that are contributing to that chemical imbalance.
The desire to use.
Yes. And so, shocker, guys, as my clients slowly titrate off of psychiatric medication, guess what gets easier?
Addiction.
Yes.
Quitting.
It gets much easier. In fact, I have worked with people who have went off of their psych meds and the process started to slowly titrate off of alcohol. I have done hyperbolic tapering off of alcohol, guys, with clients. Yeah. And you pair that with, let's test your brain. Let's look at your serotonin. Let's look at your dopamine. Let's look at your GABA. Let's look at your glutamate. We bring in a lot of good amino acids. And then we bring in eat, sleep, move, meditate. Teach my clients how to cook. I teach my clients how to sleep. I teach my clients how to fucking meditate. I teach my clients how to move their bodies. And all of this, does it take 3-4 months? Fuck no. It's a process, people. Hence why you can get yourself checked into a clinic for 60 days and come out worse than when you were started, because that's not a lifestyle change. Okay. It takes time.
Worse, more medicated, and more mental health diagnoses stacked on top of you, all which are not evidence-based practice, by the way.
I'm done with people being told it's a matter of willpower.
I'm done being told it's a matter of mental health disorders. You're bipolar. That's why this is happening. I'm done with that too. Like, I'm done with all of it. I'm done with I'm
done with comorbid disorders. Comorbid disorders is bullshit.
Yes.
Guys, how many of you have been told this? Like, well, you're bipolar and you have alcoholism.
Because you're bipolar, but you cannot diagnose bipolar disorder or anything else when you're in the throes of fucking withdrawal and detox in 30 days. Right. But they do it because they have to, because that's how they're going to get paid for your stay. Otherwise, you're not going to get paid for your stay. And by the way, I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that bipolar disorder, you get more money for. That's what I heard. We're going to ask.
Somebody tell us.
We're going to have some people in the recovery community
coming on,
and they're going to talk about this stuff. Yeah. So I cannot wait for that conversation. But I've toured many rehabs, right? And there are so many rehabs, but that doesn't mean there's so many good ways to recover, right? A lot of rehabs doesn't mean good outcomes. As a matter of fact, this model that we have has some pretty shitty outcomes. So if that were the thing and psychiatric medication was the end all be all, why is relapse so high? Why is this not a slam
because
dunk?
It's a genetic predisposition,
you're
and you're
always going to white knuckle your way through it because you've got bad genes, people.
You got to keep going. Yep, you've got bad genes, so you have to keep going. Well, by the way, it's your environment you were raised in. So unfortunately, you grew up watching that. It's kind of a death sentence for you for the rest of your life.
The confounding factors of neurotransmitter imbalance when you are active in addiction or alcohol, whatever you want to call it, you're not eating well either. So you're not even fueling your neurotransmitters.
So you're telling me that alcohol depletes the body of vital nutrients?
What?
Oh,
yeah.
Wait, what?
It destroys your gut lining. There's no way that you can even absorb good nutrients, and you're not even thinking about good nutrients. So then when you walk into these rehabs and the food menu, please look at the food menu and look at all the snacks, the shitty ass snacks they serve throughout the please. They serve throughout the day. It's terrible.
Think about this though. Think about it, guys. Like, we already know, if you're an avid listener of this show, or you've gotten curious at all about struggling with some form of addiction, and you've went down the rabbit hole of starting to read about things and look at things, okay, you're smart enough to know that the food that I put in my body, right, that's how it gives us nourishment. We learned this in like 3rd grade. We need fuel. We need fuel for the body. Well, when we are on any kind of drug, whether it's Lexapro or heroin, okay, our body, all right, is going to not be able to absorb nutrients. We are depleted by nutrients. In fact, substances deplete the body of very key nutrients. Your B vitamins, your zinc, your levels of D, your levels of C, folic acid is depleted big time. Yeah. So this is what happens. And so if we don't bring gut health into the picture, which is something I work with my clients on who struggle with addiction from the jump. From the jump, we start talking about leaky gut 101. And
I've never met somebody with an alcohol issue that doesn't also struggle with like gastric problems.
Yep.
Right.
Like, and we're on a bunch of meds for it. We have metabolic issues too. I mean, we've got diabetes going on. We've got high blood pressure going on.
Oh yes.
We've got tons of like esophageal issues. You know, this is happening to lots of issues like that. These all go hand in hand together. And so you're right. As I say that, right, I don't think I've ever met somebody who didn't have those issues either. Gut health is typically something that is impacted, and it's because nutrients are depleted. The gut lining is absorbing maybe 1/10 of that great thing that you're eating.
Which, by the way, isn't usually whole foods or healthy fats, but,
Which is not, right? Because when
Mhm.
you're greatly struggling with addiction, right? Like, talk about your prefrontal cortex dysfunction that's
Mhm.
happening, right? Like, this is our decision making. This is our impulse control. And guys, I hate to tell you, but that gets rewired when you're using a substance. It also gets rewired when you're using a psych med.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that's some of our higher order decision making processes
Mhm.
that are happening, right? And so, yeah, no, I'm not going to reach for a whole food item for a snack, right?
No. As
No.
a matter of fact, if I'm using heroin or something, that's what I'm gonna be reaching for, right? So,
Mhm.
if my if I know that well,
Or not, or I'm not eating.
you're
I'm
not
not
eating
eating at
because you're
all.
searching for
Yeah.
that dopamine, you're searching for those things.
Yeah.
Or even if it's funny because, like, people with alcohol are really interesting people. Um, they wanna lose weight a lot.
Mhm.
So, I'll have someone who struggles with alcohol come in and talk about how they're on a diet now, right? They're not reducing their alcohol, they're reducing their food intake so they can still drink the alcohol in a
Mhm.
caloric deficit, right? Like, or less calories than before. So now you're
Yes.
even fueling your body with less nutrients, right? And the same amount of alcohol as you had before because they're trying to
Mhm.
lose weight. And I'm like, "Oh my god, we're in trouble here, people. We are in such
Mhm.
big trouble." I wanted to bring this out because this statement here really got me. It got me a lot. In the differential diagnosis part, we're on page 496 right now. The key element of alcohol use disorder is the use of heavy doses of alcohol with resulting repeated and significant distress or impairment of functioning. Um, so they're saying, like, to me, it's like, okay, so if you have the gene, if you have the gene, but you don't have a repeated and significant distress, you still drink 10 drinks a night, but you don't have those distress points. Somebody else drinks 10 drinks a night and they've got 6 DUIs, right?
Mhm.
The only one that fits pathologically is the one with the DUIs.
Right.
Is that
The other
right? Is that what I'm getting out of
Yeah,
this?
yeah. Well,
Like,
the other one is a super high functioning
yeah.
alcoholic that we're never
Which is
gonna
most of the
label.
people that I work with, by the way.
Same.
Mhm.
Yes. Very, very high performing individuals, like,
Right. Yes.
big time. Yes, and
Mhm.
so that is what that's saying. Yeah.
So the differentiation is the problems that it's brought you versus if you look at your life in a non-problematic way. This is funny because this is the thing I talk about a lot in session because most of the people that I work with are high functioning people. They haven't lost a home, they haven't lost a job, they haven't lost money. They've really, their relationship is probably the only thing that's rocky, but still there. It's
Mhm.
still there. So they're not the alcoholic on the street corner with a brown paper bag
Yep.
sludging through town homeless. That's what we try to think about these people are. They're not. They're high functioning. So they don't even fit neatly into this category at
No.
all. But
No.
yet they still have a problem, but the problem is probably more of a nourishment problem than that of, alcohol. If they could exchange it for nourishment, they would probably be better, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Uh-huh, and not for psych meds, right? We're
Right.
exchanging for psych meds makes things a lot worse or can make things a lot worse, but, I even look at my husband, Jen, like, I've talked about him a million times over. Um, his childhood, his dad was sick since he was 10 years old, and he died when he was 14 or 15 years old, okay? And then in his adult life, he lost his first son, and I'm like, and he was heavy into alcohol for a long time. And then he meets me and he was also on an antidepressant, right? So he went into quote unquote treatment, which was basically outpatient. He saw an associate degreed substance abuse professional, which I find weird that anyway, that's a whole different story. And then and a psychiatrist, and that was his plan. And so he was on an SSRI, and I think he did AA 3 times or something like that.
Yes.
Anyway, he meets me and, of course, his world changed for the best, and just kidding. But he changed his whole life around, essentially, right? He changed his life around. He was on the SSRI for a couple of months, that's it. He hated the way it made him feel, and, has been sober ever since. And I'm like, "So if this genetic thing," he had nobody in his family was genetically predisposed to anything, his parents, his grandparents, nothing.
Hmm.
There was nothing there, right?
Must
So
have been his willpower.
must have been just his willpower.
Or we
Trauma.
have life
Yeah.
circumstances
Yes.
that
Yes.
are yes,
Traumatic
things
things. And not
yes.
saying that everybody has to endure such traumatic things in order to have an addiction issue, but it's definitely, you
Okay,
have to evaluate your life.
you
Mhm.
do, but look at that circumstance, right? So your
Mhm.
husband who has been labeled, right, with an
Yes.
addiction, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Was labeled with an addiction, and we don't have the genetic parts to this, right? We don't if we're going to put any
Mhm.
eggs in that basket, right? We don't have that. We have some really shitty life circumstance factors
Mhm.
that led to drinking.
Developmental, by the way, 10 to 15. Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Which later led to drinking. That drinking led to an imbalance in how his
Mhm.
chemicals were in his brain because he created an imbalance via the alcohol.
Mhm.
And then we remove that at some point
Mhm.
and we're okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Because even I can't remember the SSRI that he was on, but it was an SSRI, and I remember because I was with him at this time, and he was struggling to stay sober, like, he was ruminating about going to the bar. I remember these times because he would cry, and I'm like, "What is the problem?" He's like, "I just can't get it out
Get
of
out of my
my
head.
mind." Like,
Mhm.
I couldn't get it out of and he had been not drinking for months by this time, right? But he
Mhm.
was on the SSRI. And
Yes.
now this is all retrospective thinking, of course. I'm like, that probably was the reason why, and then when he stopped, suddenly, there was no problems after
Yes.
that, like
Yes.
yeah,
So here's a little tidbit, guys, of something
and I
to
know
think
that
about.
sounds wait, I wanna tell people, I know that sounds
Yeah.
real simplistic to say all those things, okay? So, his life was not simple, that wasn't easy, like so I wanna make
We're
sure that
you know,
people
we're
know that. Yeah.
we only have, like,
Ba-bam!
50
Anyway.
minutes, guys, to talk about
Mhm,
this, so we can't give the
mhm.
entire biopsychosocial history of poor Steve.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
However, if you think
I love
about this
Steve, by the way, I love
I
Steve,
know, he's a good guy, right?
he's a
Like,
good guy.
he puts up with you.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
and
that's
here's
it.
the deal, right? Like, so we didn't have an imbalance. Now we had, in this case, as many people who struggle with addiction, okay,
Mhm.
there are life circumstances, okay?
Life-altering circumstances
Life
for sure.
altering circumstances that happen. Like, I have also never met somebody who has been able to not who has come to me and said, "I have no life altering circumstances.
Mhm,
I have nothing that's happened to me in my life that has created big time adjustment issues for me."
mhm,
Like, life is Skittles and rainbows. Like,
mhm.
I've never had somebody who doesn't have something because everybody does. There's
Right.
something that's part of the story.
Mhm,
If we slow down enough in the addiction community to learn people's stories, we
mhm,
actually can get to like where the start of things were.
mhm.
Right. And so,
But I also wanna talk about, like, I think sometimes, like, when you're looking at because we work with a lot of very high functioning, like, CEO type people,
yes, we
right?
do.
There might not be, like, trauma as we think there's trauma. It can also
Big
be
T,
stress
little
related,
T,
little T's,
stupid
and
big
all
T, little T
but
crap.
also the stress of performance, like working in those things, and
Yes.
also going around with other people in the same circumstances and drinking for connection and drinking for all of these
Mhm,
events and drinking
mhm,
for this, that, the other thing, golf drinking, all the stuff, right?
mhm.
And the immense amount of stress and pressure that these people are under, which
Yes.
also impacts their family life and all the other things, and they're not taking care of themselves. And it's just like a cascade of a perfect storm. So
Yep.
it doesn't always have to be that your dad died when you were 15 years old, right? Like it can be stuff that happens in your adult life too, and how you
Absolutely.
manage those stressful things in your life, right?
Yes.
So just want to make
Yes.
that clear too, which would go against all the genetic code bullshit that we talk about anyhow. So,
It
mhm,
does. And the other thing that goes against it is the idea of if I'm struggling with an addiction, maybe it would make sense for me to go and, have some testing done to actually look and see
mhm,
where like I've been being told you have a deficiency in dopamine. I've been being told this for
mhm,
years. I've been on medications to help with that. I've been on SSRIs to help. Okay, I've been all these things, right? So, wouldn't it make sense at some point if you stepped yourself into an addiction treatment program that went, well, let's fucking test that shit.
Right?
Like instead of us
Mhm.
pretending that we have a dopamine or a serotonin imbalance,
Well,
why
then
why
why
don't
aren't we
why don't
but
we
why
just
aren't
test it?
okay. But see, this is what drives me crazy. So, okay, let's say you have a dopamine imbalance. You have a reward pathway problem. Okay, fine.
Mhm.
After the addiction, yes, I believe that you do have a reward pathway problem and probably some other neurotransmitters too.
Yep.
Let's start you on an SSRI. Uh, okay, how does that impact my dopamine problem? How does that improve dopamine at all? As a matter of fact, over time, SSRIs deplete dopamine, right?
Yes.
So how is doing like if we just think this
Yeah.
through logically, like
Stop
how
using
does
logic.
that like my
Stop
God,
it.
how does that help someone who with a dopamine problem? I don't understand. I I really, maybe an SNRI with the norepinephrine. But if someone really has this is against everything. If someone really has a dopamine problem and you take away the drug that's causing the dopamine problem, kind of the only drug that would improve a dopamine problem would be like Adderall or Ritalin, which they won't give you in
Mhm.
in treatment centers, right? But
Mhm.
that would be, in my mind, the only one that would actually make sense.
Right, which goes
Eh,
against everything because we can't give an addict a stimulant. Like,
right. Exactly.
what the fuck
But
are you
yet, if
talking
you
about?
have a problem in your dopamine pathway, you don't make enough dopamine.
Right. Right. And so this is a really good point, actually. I've never thought about this. It's just blowing my mind right now. Yeah. So if that is what we continue to see, and there's research on this where this is the problem. It's our dopamine pathway. Well, yeah, then why are we not giving the drug that addresses the dopamine pathway? We
I don't
give the
know,
drug
like,
that
this
addresses the serotonin pathway because you
yeah,
can't, because those drugs are addictive and you're an
right,
addict. So that's contraindicated. We cannot do that. So we're just going to throw a bunch of the other SSRIs into the
and
mix.
hope it works. Mhm,
Or what if we would do testing and we
mhm,
would come to find out that you have a ridiculous deprivation or overproduction of
mhm,
glutamate?
yeah,
Glutamate is what we need for learning and memory. Glutamate is
mhm,
what we need. Glutamate reinforces associations between cues and substance abuse, like stress and craving. This is our glutamate pathway, guys. Glutamate pathway is also the one that like people really struggle when they have recurrent obsessive thoughts
mhm,
that they cannot stop. This can be an over or an underproduction of glutamate. So why is it that we don't go look and see, okay, let's test your GABA, let's test your glutamate, let's see how
mhm.
these two are working together. What if you need a little N-acetylcysteine to help with some of that? Because
Why I don't
I don't, okay, let's try that. Because and then let's work through that. Like there are so many options, guys, that are new age, state of the art, holistic, woo woo, alternative, all the words we
yes,
hate,
mhm,
that actually can help with addiction
yes.
and help get through people with addiction because of these imbalances instead of us just guessing. It's a Russian roulette of guesswork.
Not just guessing, but, like, avoiding or, uh I don't know, like, I feel like there's so many rules, like, there's so many rules of addiction and so many rules, and, we can't do anything else outside of the box, this
Yeah.
weird little box that we have.
Yeah.
To me, it's the same thing as mental health stuff, and it's the same thing in the med tapering community. Suddenly, we've got all these rules that
Rules.
everybody needs to follow, and I'm
Mhm.
like, "What the fuck?" Like, enough with the rules. Like, enough with
Mhm.
these boxed in ideas, because then you can never look outside the box and figure out what you actually need. Like deprivation, that's the word I was looking for. Deprivation, like we're depriving people of amino acids, we're depriving people of
Mhm.
nutrient cofactors, we're depriving them in lieu of white knuckling. And I'm like, I think that's where we get the willpower conversation, because if you can't white
Mhm.
knuckle it hard enough, you don't have enough willpower, right? And I'm like, what if we didn't have to white knuckle shit? What if we could just fed the brain and made it a little bit easier for people to come
Yes.
off of whatever it is they're on, whether it's psych meds or, addictive substances? What if we
Mhm.
just made it easier with feeding the brain? Like, I don't understand why we can't feed the brain. It's that's mind-boggling. So this weird thing of depriving people of the basic nutrients that a brain needs is mind-numbing. I don't
And
get it.
hence why I teach my addiction clients how to cook.
Yeah,
I teach them
there
how
was
to
a
cook.
really cool this was years ago, and this was in Stewart, Florida. They're no longer there anymore. And she was the first one that I ran across that had an kind of an inpatient/outpatient treatment type center. And they had someone on staff that wouldn't teach them how to cook. They taught them how to make smoothies, nutrient-dense smoothies.
Yep.
And I asked why the smoothie, what's so important? She goes, because people don't like to cook. So we're trying to make it as easy as we
Easy.
can by throwing nutrient dense things in a blender and making it
Yes.
taste good. And they actually started off with like higher sugary, not sugar, but like sugar substitutes and stuff
Yep.
to make it sweeter because people in addiction like a sweeter thing. And then they would reduce that over time to like zero sweeteners.
Mhm.
And until you acclimate to all of that. And I'm like, this is genius.
Mhm.
This is
Yep.
genius stuff, right? Like
Yes.
basic genius brain food. That's what it was. And then they also used amino acids and other nutrient cofactors and things like that too.
Yeah.
Which I think is also genius.
It is. I mean, shout out here to Julia Ross, the mood cure, the
I want
pioneer
her on
in
the show.
I know we gotta get
Yeah.
her on. The pioneer in like I'm working with clients that struggle with addiction.
Yeah.
What if we just tried a little L-tyrosine, right? What if we just tried a little 5-HTP, right? Like
Mhm.
what if we just tried these things? And over time, right, she was able to
Mhm.
develop symptomology that is
Mhm.
indicative of over or underproduction of
Of
serotonin, of
right.
dopamine, of GABA, of glutamate,
Right.
right? Like
Mhm.
and she was able to put this together, and so we can look at how do we optimize. And this is what I say to my clients with addiction. You don't have an addiction. We need to optimize your neurotransmitter pathways.
You're starving.
Yeah. Like your brain
Yeah. You're
brain
starving.
needs things. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to teach you. And for some people, they want to go ahead and do some testing and look at those. Like if you don't
Mhm.
test, you guess, right? Like we know this.
Right.
And for some people, it's
Mhm.
an option. For some people, it's not. And if it's not because of a financial constraint or there's a belief within this that they don't want to do, I have a lot of people that come to me and go, my doctors have told me that there's no way to test my
Right.
serotonin pathway. I've had
Yeah.
3 people in the last 2 months say that to me.
I know.
It makes me sick to my stomach. I'm
Mhm.
like, really? You want to bet?
Mhm. Exactly.
How would you
Just
like me to
because they
hook you
don't
up?
know.
How'd you like
Just
me
because
to
they
hook
don't
you
know.
up with a home
Right.
kit?
Right.
We could have
Exactly.
it to you within the next few weeks and do a whole
Exactly.
report on it, and then you and
Mhm.
I have a pathway to start.
That's
Here's
right.
where your levels are at. And then I will
And
tell
every
yes.
stinking time we do those labs, people are like, "This sounds exactly what I'm going through."
Yep.
Exactly. I've never had a person go, "Yeah, no, that seems off to me."
Yep.
Never. Absolutely never. But I think, I just getting back to the basics of feeding your brain
Yeah.
is like the most important part. And I, not to digress, but I think about all these little kids that are on stimulants, right?
Yeah.
And they're losing weight, they're not eating. But you know what? As long as they're taking the stimulant and they're getting the dopamine from the stimulant and they're sitting still in school, that's
Mhm.
okay. And I'm like, but fundamentally, that is not okay.
No.
Like you need nutrients. And then I see
Yes.
moms on Facebook and they're like, just give them sugary food, just give them anything with high calories, blah, 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 because they need the calories. And I'm like, they need the nutrients is what they
Mhm.
need. And they're not getting that if these stimulants make them not have an appetite, because kids won't eat if they don't have an appetite.
Right.
But same thing with, if you're addicted to things, like you're not eating in lieu of the addictive substance,
And I
right?
want to throw something out there that you said earlier. There
Mhm.
is a lot of discussion out there about how if I had ADHD as a child,
Mhm.
I am so much more likely to have an addiction as an adult. And
Mhm.
Terry and I are here to tell
Untreated
you,
ADHD, they say, untreated.
yes,
Yep.
yes. Now
Mhm.
imagine that child who was taking stimulants
Mhm.
in their childhood. We have just created a significant chemical imbalance in their dopamine, for sure, their dopamine neurotransmitter pathway. However, we have also impacted the other pathways because guess what?
You
They
can't
all
get
work
something for
together.
nothing.
Yep, we rob Peter to pay Paul. This is neuroadaptation, guys. This is what the brain does, right? Like, if I am deprived of cortisol, my adrenals are not functioning, I'm going to steal from my sex hormones to try to bring that over. Like, this is how it works. This is how it works, guys. It all works in tandem. It's always trying to save the other thing that's deprived. So don't think for a second it's siloed. It's not. Okay. But think about that child. So that child whose dopamine pathway, we just created a chemical imbalance in it. We've probably also implicated this in the other pathways. They get a little older. They've been on stimulants for many, many, many years. I'm not surprised that you now struggle with impulsivity, with cravings, with addiction, because we jacked that pathway up 10 years ago for you and you're still on these meds.
Well, and likely if you did that, you're probably on something else too by now.
So
if
guess
you started
what?
When you're 5.
So guess what? That addiction now you have as an adult, or those grave issues with reward, motivation, memory, impulsivity, they are not a result of ADHD. They're a result of the medications that you took when you were younger. But yet we want to say, well, no, they had ADHD.
No,
this is what it was from. No, we did.
Well, and by the way, what does the word fucking untreated mean anyway? Because there are many ways to address something that don't mean pharmacological intervention. So when people throw around the word untreated, what it means is unmedicated. Okay. Let's not get that confused, because there's lots of ways to treat somebody or to help them that doesn't require you to mess their brain up.
Yes.
So when I hear that untreated, I'm like, what do you mean untreated?
How about this for an idea? How about how the DSM, and as clinicians, we are taught that addiction is actually part, when we talk about culture, we're going to bring culture in for a minute. Okay. So we're going to talk about the Native American population and how much higher levels of addiction exist within that population. And the reason why they have an addiction and why they are addicts is because it is related to genetics. There is this strong cultural tie to it. No, actually, what happens is this is part of the world around them. That is part of their culture when they are much younger. It is not surprising to have 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds that grow up around this and are drinking alcohol or using other drugs at a very, very young age. Okay. 10, 15 years before your central nervous system is even fully developed. Okay. So the drug itself is what is creating those addictions that are labeled on them later in life. But we're like, oh no, man, you got family history. There's some cultural ties to this. Yeah. I mean, this is something you're going to live with. No,
I wonder,
it's not.
but I wonder, this is and I'm sure there is research out here, like, because we live near in the state we're in, there's lots of reservations around. And so I wonder if there's a difference between someone who is raised or grows up or is exposed to a lot of reservation culture versus people who are not, who've never been exposed to that, but are still Native American, right? So is there a difference in the rates of alcoholism and drug use if you've never been exposed
And I've
to
never worked with
right?
somebody who has grown up on a reservation who didn't have psychiatric intervention at their fingertips right on the res.
Because reservation healthcare is free.
And so I've worked with many, many, many people who have had that. It's at their fingertips, and it's easy. It's an easy intervention. It's something that goes hand in hand, and everyone comes labeled as an addict. They're addicted to marijuana. They are addicted to alcohol, and they sit in front of me as adults. And when I go through this whole entire story with them and go back to the beginning, I then can explain to them, this wasn't just because of your genetics. You're not biologically screwed. Your environment, very similar to the environment we live in the northern states, all we do is drink. You die, you drink. Somebody is born, you drink. You have your daughter.
A first birthday party.
There's a keg there. This is
Yep.
this is part of that culture. So we can't negate that. And I'm not trying to negate that, guys, but it just keeps going back to, well, yeah, you're kind of screwed because look at you're Native American. Look at you're a white
Yeah.
man. You actually have a much higher
So what are you
rate.
supposed to do with that
Yeah.
information? You're biologically
Yeah.
screwed.
It's
Oh,
a prison
great.
sentence.
Okay.
No, it's a
So
prison sentence and
yeah, it's a
you're a
lifetime
forever
sentence.
consumer.
Yeah.
You're a forever consumer. And
Why don't they just label you
yeah,
at
I mean,
birth? And then you can just move your like,
it's
all
like
of your healthcare is then created in the idea that you're
you know what?
biologically screwed.
It's like Hester Prynne from The Scarlet Letter, and there's this
Oh,
big
yeah.
adulteress, this big A, and you're gonna fucking wear that A for alcoholic across your
Forever.
chest forever. Forever.
Yep.
And if we teach you to believe that you are helpless and that this is a life sentence,
Mm,
you will live that helpless life sentence.
you will.
And that's not how
Yes.
my practice operates. So I do this flip fucking opposite of pretty much everything I ever
Mhm.
learned when it comes to addiction. And
Well, what do they say? Whether you say you can or you can't, you're right.
mhm,
So whatever it is that you believe in is going to be your truth,
yes,
right? So do you want to believe it? And that doesn't mean living in denial of something that's happening.
no.
Like if you are struggling with addictions,
Mhm.
living in the denial is not what I'm talking about. I'm saying like living in the truth. Well, I'm destined to be this because of my
Yep.
genetics or my biology or my parents or my this or that. You're screwing
Yes.
yourself. Like you are screwing yourself. And if you're listening to people telling you that, you need to stop screwing me
Yes.
over because that is not my
And you
truth.
need to stop
Right?
falling. You need to stop falling into these stupid like stats that are out there as I hold up this
Ugh,
dumb book, right?
this
Where it says,
dumb book.
well, guess
Yes.
what? Like 12-month prevalence of alcohol use disorder is clearly greater among Native Americans and Alaskan Natives. It's greater than among whites, Hispanics, or African Americans. And then it gives you these cute little percentages. Okay. This information is arbitrary.
Mhm.
Addiction and where the addicted brain comes from can be so many different spaces. And we have to view it in that way. We cannot view it as, yep, first degree relative, you're Native American. Here,
Mhm.
I mean, here are all the cards
What
stacked
did you
against you.
You said I think when we were off air, you said this is where we try to make correlation equal causation
This
or
is what,
something
yes, we
like
just
that.
tried to
Yeah.
draw a straight line, and that makes people feel so happy.
So happy. But what people don't understand is the majority of this book is correlational research. It's not causational research. The
Mhm.
majority of psychology is correlational, not causational research.
Yes,
But it's funny because when we bring something up there, that's correlation. That's correlation does not
people
equal
get so mad.
causation. I'm like, oh my God, they get so mad. This
Blah.
book is correlation. This whole
Yeah.
thing. And this is when you try to make correlation, causation, and now we have a whole diagnostic manual based on that. And what is that? What is that one thing on Gretchen? Stop trying to make fetch happen.
Oh,
Like,
see.
do you
Oh, from Mean Girls. You're talking
Mean
about
Girls,
Gretchen
yeah.
from fetch is
Yeah,
not a word. Fetch is
yeah,
not a thing.
stop
Stop
trying
trying
to
to
make
make
fetch
well, we're
happen.
trying to make genetics happen, and we
Yes.
are trying to fit really neatly a
Mhm,
round peg in a square hole, and we're trying to do it really, really neatly. And that is what the addiction community tries to do. And this
yes.
is what Western education tries to do. And so then you come to cockamamie, crazy ass therapists like Terry and I, and we're like, yeah, no, you're gonna
Mhm,
unlearn everything that you've been taught. We have to
mhm.
actually help teach you how to
Un
undo the damage in
unlearn
the
unlearn the things
narratives.
unlearn the things that have victimized you and continuously
Yes.
victimize you.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna
Yeah.
stop making fetch happen.
Stop making fetch happen. God damn it. That's it. Okay. Well, I think it's probably a good space to wrap up. And
Yes.
I want to say thank you to the people that we've got a handful of people that have been on our live watching this. And so
Oh,
thanks
fun.
for
Thanks for
sticking
being here.
around with us because we can see
Mhm.
that. And honestly, thank you. I think Terry and I, we have to give a quick shout out. We have got a following of people following the Gaslit Truth podcast that we are just so incredibly grateful for.
Yes.
It is like amazing. The comments we get from people, the good and the bad, right? Whatever, bring it all
Mhm.
on. We don't
Yep.
care, right? And if we're not your cup of tea, great, then fucking move on. But if we are and you want to get curious in these spaces with us, we just have to say thank you to the people that are there
Yeah.
and that have been listening and that stay with us, because we are bringing truth that is out of the norm. We're bringing shit into the ether that's floating out there, but people don't want to talk about it. And it's like, why the hell not? And we have
Mhm.
such a great following of people who are willing to stick in this like rebel space with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Rebels. We've been trying to think about a
Yeah,
way,
rebels.
like when you have
Rebels.
audiences. Yes, like maybe we're going to be the rebels. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, maybe our audience will be all the rebels that are out there, right? Like all of our little rebels that listen. I don't know. We're gonna have to come up with we're gonna have to coin something for everybody out there, because we want you guys got to have, like Gaga. Gaga's
Yeah.
got all of her little monsters. All
Right.
right, well, we're gonna come up with something for all you guys because we just
Yeah.
we couldn't do it without
If
you.
you
So
have any
continue to do it.
thoughts, let us know what those thoughts are that we could call
Yeah,
our audience.
awesome.
So yeah.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, guys, we are the Gaslit Truth Podcast. Please, please support the show. You can go on by buying us a coffee. You can subscribe on YouTube, guys, and watch
Please.
us.
Yes.
Share our episodes, pass it on to people. And if you have any Gaslit Truth stories that you would like to share, or you just want to tell us about things that are going on with you, we have people that will write in and ask us to share their stories too. Even if you're not wanting to come on, shoot us an email at thegaslittruthpodcast@gmail.com. So, all right, everyone, we're
Peace.
out.